and welcome to the Impostor Syndrome Files. I am so grateful that you're here. My name is Kim Manager, and I'm a women's leadership coach. I started this podcast because as a lifelong sufferer of imposter syndrome and a coach who sees this in 98% of the women I meet, I wanted to take this conversation to a bigger stage, so to speak. Imposter syndrome is triggered by a lot of things, but two of the primary triggers are transitions and feeling different from those around us. Women in traditionally male-dominated environments experience these triggers on an almost daily basis, so it's only natural that we would feel this way. What compounds these feelings is the sense that we are alone. The belief that if we share our feelings, we'll expose our incompetence even further. So we carry it around like a deep, dark secret. I started this podcast because I want to put a stop to this nonsense and destigmatize imposter syndrome. Because we don't talk about it, we look around and assume that everyone around us has it all figured out, that we're somehow the exception to the rule, when in reality, we're all feeling this way. And when we can own that and say it out loud, we all benefit. Nobody more so than you. So thanks again for being here. If you enjoy it, please share it with others who might also benefit. Welcome, Olivia. I've been waiting for a while to have this conversation with you. I'm so excited. You and I have had some great chats recently, and I'm really excited to bring this to our community today. So I would love to start just by asking you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about you.
Hi, Kim. I'm so excited to actually be here and having this conversation. It has been brewing for a while, so I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you. My name is Olivia Jaras, and I'm the founder of Salary Coaching for Women and the Empower, that's with an H-E-R, so Empower, technically speaking, the Empower Society, which is a community of women who are determined to, be more, earn more, and make a difference with their lives and their careers. And I think that's me in a nutshell.
Wonderful. And we're going to talk more about what you do as we move forward. But I want to kick us off with my standard questions of, what does imposter syndrome mean to you? And how, if at all, has it shown up in your life or in your work?
Well, it's funny because oftentimes I find that I'm coaching women on the imposter syndrome, and it really is a mirror of myself in so many ways. I know that sounds really weird, but I find that the biggest thing that has shown up in my life when it comes down to imposter syndrome is in my ability to think that I deserve to earn more. And it's kind of ironic because I coach women on their earning potential and helping them figure out how to make more money for a living. So it's very much a mirror of my very own imposter syndrome and the obstacles that I've had to overcome in order to more than anything believe that I'm worthy of what I want to be worthy, more so than what I've been taught by society to be worthy of. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but
a lot of sense.
That's what I feel embodies the imposter syndrome for me.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that it brings up for me a lot of I don't know if irony is the best word here too, but I have had a lifelong struggle with imposter syndrome. I've been very candid about that. And sometimes that imposter syndrome kicks in the form of, who am I to coach other people on imposter syndrome, right? And then I really start to think about the fact that who's better to coach people on certain challenges than the ones who have had the same struggle and who have found ways to better manage it. And so it's interesting to hear you say that. Totally.
But I think that's kind of the beauty of overcoming the imposter syndrome. For most of us, it's when you face your biggest fears, and which truly for me, the imposter syndrome is that innate fear that we have of ourselves, right? We fear that we're not enough. We fear that we can't do it. And that's truly a fear of ourselves and not believing that we're worthy. But when you overcome that main obstacle, which truly is the imposter syndrome, it becomes your biggest asset, right? I don't think that we have these kind of challenges in life just for the fun of it.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's a bigger power at play that says, all right, you are going to deal with these kind of problems. And if you overcome them, there's a silver lining for you. And there's lessons not only for you, but there's growth in it for you as well.
I really like that perspective. I think that's a great way to think about it. And I'm curious too, because you do a lot, as you mentioned, with salary coaching. And there are few ways in which our work or our value is quantified, right? And then salary is one of those big ones. And that's a prime opportunity for this stuff to show up, for the self-doubt, for that sense of I'm not worthy. Like, what are you seeing out there? What are some of the big challenges or themes that you're seeing with the people that you're working with?
So I would say that the biggest way that I see this imposter syndrome play out in women when it comes down to advocating for their worth in the marketplace, whether that's in a job or negotiating a raise or starting salary or even negotiating their coaching rates, right? If it's a coach or a consultant, what I find is it shows up most often in inaction, in that not taking that step to go ask for a raise, or not advocating for yourself when you knew you should have, and just stalling. And oftentimes we sugarcoat it and we kind of just say that, no, I was just lazy, or I just don't have time to put my resume together, or I just don't have time to put my rates together. And it's more often than not that there's like a deep-seated insecurity there that you don't want to pull the trigger because you don't want to be rejected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that is a big piece of it, right? And I think, for those of us who have underlying challenges with self-worth or, just deeper kinds of self-doubt, that fear of rejection is really real. And
it's legit.
Yeah. And so what more powerful way to set yourself up for that, potentially? In our own minds, this is how we see it, right? Than to ask for something and be told you're not worth it, right? Like, you're not worthy of what you're asking for. It just feels for so many like it's just too much to bear. What do you do? Obviously we could be here for weeks talking about this, but like, what are some of the key things that you think that women should think about, or where do we go with this conversation?
So I like to think of rejection not as a reflection in the mirror of your value, right? I like to think of it as more of like a signaling post or a course correction, right? Like I said, I'm in many ways, I'm a very numerical and quantitative person. Like, if your market value is not there, like, you shouldn't expect to actually get it, right? I'm a comp person. I know my numbers. I love my numbers. But at the same time, I'm kind of a more spiritual person as well. And I do think that there's something to be said for what does that rejection actually mean? It's not necessarily a reflection on you. Maybe deep inside you knew you really were not worth that money, but you were just asking just for the sake of asking, and you're not up to par. But more often than not, I don't find that is actually the situation. I find that women are qualified, but when they do go to ask and they don't get it, or they put themselves out there and they start facing rejection, I think there's something more meaningful that the universe is trying to convey to you, right? More often than not, it's like, maybe this is not the right place for you. Maybe this is not the right job for you. And it's kind of the universe, if you will, or whatever higher power you believe in, slamming the door on your face, telling you it is time you step up on deck for that bigger opportunity that you've been stalling on for years, probably. And or maybe it's also a situation in which the rejection in itself is meant to build you up and to build that muscle of resilience, because you've never been rejected enough, or you've never been face to face with something that is truly going to make you stronger. And I think that was the case for me when back during the Great Recession, I applied to 1,231 jobs. I was laid off along with millions of other people from like a very fancy, cushy job. And I was laid off. And what ensued was me applying to 1,231 jobs, getting 5 interviews and 0 job offers. Right. And for the most part of it, admittedly, I absolutely saw those rejections, every single one of those rejections, as a reflection of me and how mediocre I was to not warrant even a McDonald's job. Right? I got rejected from McDonald's twice. And I could choose, and this is where like the power of making that shift is. You can choose the interpretation of that rejection. You can either choose to say it's the workforce rejecting me, or you can choose to decide, you know what, maybe the message here is it's not that the workforce is rejecting me, but maybe I just haven't cracked the code and I'm not doing the right things to step up into that dream opportunity of mine. Mm. And that was absolutely the case for me.
What changed? Was it more mindset, or was it more tactical, or both?
Well, what changed? You see, I found myself claiming, and I'll remember this forever. I found myself at the unemployment office claiming a biweekly check. And, you know, back then, if any of your listeners have ever been on the being unemployed or were unemployed back then, you had to apply to, you had like every 2 weeks you could go claim an unemployment check if you're eligible, but you had to show up with your resume and your list of jobs that you'd applied to those past 2 weeks. This is how I know that I applied to 1,231 jobs, right? And that week that I'm showing up to, I showed up at 5 a.m. because I knew that it would be at least a couple hours before it would be my turn, because the line would go up for blocks and blocks. So give or take 9 a.m., I'm in front of the clerk. I've got my resume that, you know, says that I actually went to a really good university. I went to Tufts University in Boston, which is like a legitimately good school by all standards. And I have my list of job applications for the week, which included 2 rejections from McDonald's. And the clerk goes and looks at the job list and looks at my resume and then looks up at me and says, gee, I guess that expensive East Coast education didn't pay off, did it?
Wow.
I broke. I didn't even make it out of the building and I collapsed crying. Like, that was, let alone that my husband was deployed in Iraq and my dad had just died. But that was like, pardon my French, and I hope it's okay to say it, but it was one of the shittiest moments in my career. And I didn't even make it out of the building. I just collapsed crying, like feeling so dejected and rejected by the workforce. I was like, why? If there's a God, why me? All I want is to contribute and to be a contributing factor in society. And at that moment, I heard it so clearly. It was this inner voice that just kind of came through, and this is where it gets a little crazy, but I heard it so clearly, and it just kept saying, it's not you. It's the process that's broken. It's not you. It's the system. It's the process that's broken. And that little nagging thought kept nagging me for like the next 2 days until I finally sat and I was like, what does this even mean? That it's not me who's broken. And that's when I realized like, oh, the way that I've been seeing all of these rejections is that they're on me, is that these jobs actually looked at me and said, you're not good enough. But the reality is, they're probably not even seeing me. With the way how online job application portals are, 90% of applications will not be even seen by a human being. They will just be filtered out by keywords, statistics, and numbers within the job applicant pool. So I realized that it wasn't me, that it was just a system that I was going about to try get a job, let alone my dream job, that wasn't working. And literally, the minute I made that mind shift and that decision that, you know what, I'm done. I have the right to my dream job and my dream opportunity. And I'm not going to go find it the way that I've been told to find it. I'm going to find it the way that comes out from my heart and naturally to find it. And literally within a matter of weeks, I was working in Washington, D.C. at one of the top international development organizations, the equivalent of the World Bank, but for Latin America, the IDB, managing hundreds of thousands of dollars in projects, managing people all over the country. And this is literally going from being rejected by McDonald's to landing my dream job in a matter of weeks, which was insane. But I did that not only for that job, but for a couple of subsequent jobs, right? I landed then my next dream job at an Ivy League institution and got promoted. And eventually I was like, you know what, something here, because I was helping people on the side do the same thing. And eventually the epiphany was just, the system is so flippin' broken. Let's fix it. And that's when salary coaching for women started. But it was from overcoming that imposter syndrome.
It's so powerful to hear you talk about this. And I'm imagining that there are a lot of people listening who can relate. And especially now, we've had a really tough year. There's been a lot of volatility. There are a lot of people who were not expecting to be looking for a job this year and unfortunately find themselves in that situation. For anybody who is feeling that sense of despair, that sense of there's something wrong with me, I am not marketable, I'm not worthy, what's the first thing that you would recommend that they do?
Realize that it is your fault. It absolutely is your fault. And the reason I'm saying it is not because you are unworthy, but it's because it's your choice to interpret your circumstances as you being unworthy. It's absolutely within your right and within your power to decide the interpretation that you give to all of that rejection and to all of that crap that is happening to you. Because maybe, just maybe, it's this divine intervention telling you to course correct. Maybe, and you probably, if you're listening to this and you know, like these words are going to absolutely resonate with you, that you've been settling for way too long for less than you deserve. And you've been wanting change and you've known that you've been stuck in a hole, in a black hole career that is taking you nowhere and you've wanted out. And I think that this is, call it God, universe, whatever it is, it's divine intervention, making you fall face flat on the ground so that you can finally realize that you don't get another try at this life and that you should not be settling for mediocre, but you are. And you asked for greatness when you stepped into this world, and you deserve to be in greatness. So whatever it takes to course correct you, I think is going to absolutely happen. But it's your choice. It's your choice. We have free will. If you decide to not step up, well, that's on your shoulders, and that is going to mark the rest of your career.
It's a powerful and tough message, I think, for a lot of people. And I will say, having worked in the high-tech industry during the dot-com bust, having worked through multiple recessions and just twists and turns in the economy, I have seen so many people experience that shock and disbelief when they've lost their jobs and months later had conversations with them and have them say to me, "It's the best thing that ever happened to me." I knew
it absolutely really is. It really usually is.
I've heard countless people tell me a long time it was time to make a change, and I kept ignoring it. And all of a sudden, that decision was made for me.
And in hindsight, it will always be 2020. You'll always understand why everything happened the exact way it did. But you can't see it when you're face flat in the dirt. So get yourself up and start. What I usually suggest is, like, if you are in that situation where you're like, my life just sucks and it is terrible and it's miserable, what I usually suggest is start thinking like, take this as a clear message. There's a red flag here, not waving, but slamming you on the face because there is something that you're not getting and that you were not willing to listen. What is that message? And the way that you find that message is by going within and starting to think about, what is it that you really, really want? What is it that you've always really wanted? And what is it that energizes you? Versus what is it that depletes you? And you're probably going to find that so many things about that last job or position that you're currently in that you hate, like so many of those things actually deplete you of energy. And as women, we're so flippant intuitive. We know so well how that little radar inside of us operates and tells us, like, our gut feelings are usually spot on. We have a very good radar for what energizes us and what depletes us. We're just not listening.
You're right. And I will say that there's a bit of counterintuitiveness to what we're talking about, because a lot of people are feeling this sense of, well, I don't have the luxury of being able to do that, right? I have to find a job because I need an income and I have financial responsibilities. And so, yeah, that sounds great, but I can't really do that. I need to take the path of least resistance and find a job that's on the path that I've been on. What would you say to that?
Do you have the luxury to settle for a mediocre paycheck and career for the rest of your life? Because if you really do, boy, we're on the wrong conversational track here. This is how I talk to our ladies, and I'm very forthcoming. It's all on you. If you want to settle for less than you deserve, go ahead and do that. Take the path of least resistance rather than, and here's the thing, here's the crazy thing about settling for that path of least resistance. It usually provides the most mediocre and less rewarding results, right? If instead, and it doesn't have to take long. I mean, some of the ladies in our community land their dream job within a matter of weeks. Literally, this woman, Isla, in our community posted yesterday, and she started our program 2 weeks ago. She went from unemployed to dream employed, earning thousands, tens of thousands of dollars more than she'd ever earned. So what I would say was, I don't have the luxury, or I don't have the money to align myself with the right skills. Well, guess what? My belief is that if you don't show up, then the universe is not going to show up for it either. It's not going to hand you your opportunities on a silver platter. And the same goes for the value of what you bring to the table, right? So if, say, for example, often women will be like, well, I can't afford your coaching services or your programs. Like they're just too expensive. I'm like, you know what? That's okay. I've got material for free out there online on YouTube. You can find all sorts of free materials to help yourself. But here's the thing. I'm not going to devalue my worth and my time because I know what I can help you achieve. And I know what my work is worth. So if you can meet me here, I can help you. And I'm going to help you on that journey so that you can land your dream job, your dream career, whatever it is that you're aiming for, and make it lucrative. But if you don't want to show up, that's okay. I just think that money is an energetic exchange, right? So I see that from my side of coaching. But when it comes down to a woman who's saying, well, lucky for you that you've got this business, or lucky for them because they're more qualified or more talented, I want you to understand that if you're in that position and you're listening right now, that what you're trying to exchange for money is a weak exchange, right? If you're just trying to apply and land any job, right? Me, back when I was applying for that McDonald's job, if you're trying to go for the path of least resistance and make that monetary exchange for what you bring to the table, right? What I call your genius zone, the first available opportunity to come your way, or just trying to get anything for that in exchange for that genius zone, it's a very weak energetic transfer. And what that translates into, inevitably, and I can absolutely guarantee this, is a mediocre career in which you're going to be stuck in this black hole for the rest of your career until you decide that, you know what, I've had enough. And I guarantee you are going to be undersold and you're going to be underpaid, and people will not pay you what you deserve because the value is not there. They don't see it if you don't see it.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's interesting to me hearing you say this too, because on the one hand, it's a tough message, like we talked about, right? But it's a message of empowerment, which is so much greater to me than the tendency that we naturally have in moments of vulnerability to be victims, right? To see ourselves as victims of circumstances, of choices, of whatever the case may be. We have a choice, like you said, to decide at every moment how we're going to respond to the world around us. We cannot control what other people do or how the world responds to us, but we can control how we respond. And your message of empowerment is so inspiring to me because it gives us the wheel, right? If the alternative is to be a victim, then we are always at the mercy of forces outside of our own control. But if it's on us, if it truly is my quote unquote fault, right, for the situation that I'm in, great news. Now I'm the one who can fix it. I'm the one who can decide where it goes from here.
But and that's exactly it. It's always been within your power to fix it. I don't care if you were laid off, fired, or humiliated in the workforce and just so jaded that you never want to go back in. It's you who's giving your power away. And it's you who can reclaim it. Nobody else can reclaim that power for you. I know that it can be hurtful, and I know it's painful to feel that rejection and to not feel good about yourself and what you have been through. And many times I often find myself like, geez, you should never have anyone go through these kind of misery or painful moments. But at the end of the day, it's you who chooses to give away your power, and it's you who chooses to reclaim it. And there's no other way around it. You can choose to be the victim, or you can choose to be resilient.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I'm curious from a tactical perspective too, for people who maybe have a dream that feels unrealistic, who really truly are in desperate financial straits, right? What do you think about some type of a hybrid model? Do you see there being creative ways of getting to this better place by maybe as a short-term solution, I take a less than ideal job while I'm thinking about what's next? Or what would be your advice to someone who feels like, I believe everything you're saying, but it's just not realistic?
So this is the thing that I would love for your listeners to understand, like your genius zone, right? This career capital, this asset that you have inside your head, what I call your genius zone. I want you to think of it as like a blank slate. And on this blank slate, you can have different pillars, and each one of these pillars is a revenue stream, right? So your career, especially nowadays, nobody's career is a 9 to 5 for the next 30 years. That just doesn't happen, especially now that we have the onset of the gig economy, the consulting economy, all of these different revenue streams. I want you to think and understand that you have a gift inside, and that gift can be monetized through multiple streams. So maybe you're thinking, I want to start up my own widget company one day. And you can work towards that, but working towards that doesn't preclude you also working simultaneously on other revenue streams. Maybe you're just going to have to work making widgets for a company in the meantime. And maybe you can also perhaps coach other people on making widgets before you open your company, because there's steps between A and Z, Z being your ultimate dream, right? So sometimes you get lucky, you can leap from A to Z, but more often than not, you're going to have to go from A to B, B to C, C to F, F to W, and then like move your way up as you're gaining that momentum. And the more momentum you gain with your career, the more powerful your ascent into Z is going to be. Does that make sense?
It does. It makes a lot of sense. And I think it's liberating in a way for many because I'm going to make an assumption that there are a lot of people that are thinking about, I'm here at A, right? I want Z. There's no way I can just beam myself to Z right now, right? It's a good reminder that there are a lot of options and steps along the way to help us get there. Just because Z feels so far removed from reality right now does not mean that it's not realistic at some point.
Exactly. And what you need to do is like take those baby steps, and maybe that next baby step is, and I was talking with one of our ladies yesterday. She's like, I want a job in Facebook or at Facebook. I'm like, okay, well, it might be a leap considering your work in the pharma industry to leap into Facebook. However, what if you at least try to move from pharma industry into the tech industry, where you could work for a company maybe like Facebook first, and then start inching yourself closer into that dream, if you do have a dream, right? Oftentimes women don't know what their dream is, and that's because you're not there yet. Like you haven't sifted through the clouds enough yet to see with enough clarity. So that's when you just have to go another direction that energizes you. And that's when it's going to all become really clear.
Yeah, absolutely. Clarity is such a foundational part of everything that we're talking about, and something that we don't take enough time for. I think we all owe it to ourselves to spend more time asking ourselves those deeper questions of, what do I want? Right? It sounds so simple, but most people can't answer that.
Exactly.
While I have you, I have a quick question I want to run by you because of your salary coaching expertise. I'm getting a lot of questions lately from people who are saying, is it appropriate to ask for a raise during a pandemic? How do I ask for a raise when our company has downsized over the last 6 months? What are your thoughts on that?
You see, I've seen women literally during this pandemic working in industries like the restaurant industry, which for all purposes is tanking, not only get promoted, but get raises and get promoted to like managing people because they were strategic about their approach. Don't just ask for the sake of asking. Figure out a way in which you can improve the bottom line of the company. How can you truly make a difference in the struggle and bring something to improve the bottom line? And that's when you gain that seat at the table. Make yourself deserve that seat at the table during a pandemic, because not only will you make yourself, not the word's not inevitable, but indispensable, but the raise is going to be inevitable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great point.
Find ways to become indispensable, and not just because of the work that you're doing, because oftentimes women just will make themselves indispensable by being the ones that bring coffee for everyone at the meeting or take notes. Like, not with that. Make yourself indispensable when it comes down to the bottom line of the company.
Yeah, and this goes back to the empowerment piece too, right? Because one of the things that I talk a lot about is the fact that we have a lot more opportunity than we think we do. Right now, even though things feel really uncertain, which often leads us to feel anxious, there's a lot of unanswered questions out there. There's a lot of problems that businesses are trying to solve. Find your genius zone, like you're saying, right? And then be really intentional and take that initiative and say, I want to be part of the solution. I have an idea. I have a solution to this problem. I have something that I want to try out. And there's more opportunity for creativity now than probably ever before, because no one's been here before. No one knows what the answers to these questions are. So that's a great way to what you're talking about, right? Of really truly show your value to the bottom line. And then, like you said, the money becomes a no-brainer, right? Because it's
money follows. Mm-hmm. That's the one thing that I've learned in overcoming my imposter syndrome when it comes down to money and my worth, is that if you understand the value that you bring to the table and how you can impact lives, and you start living in your genius zone, money literally just follows. It gravitates to you. And so do clients, and so do promotions, and so do jobs. I've tested this with myself, and I've tested it with clients, and it's just like this, I don't know. It's like gravity. It's almost like this law that happens. It must come to you if you embrace yourself and don't question who you are and what you bring to the table.
Wow. I could talk to you all day, but that seems like a really great place to wrap up. And I will put into the show notes all of your information, links, contact information for anybody who wants to follow up with you and hear more and benefit from all your great wisdom and expertise. So thank you so much, Olivia. This has been so much fun. And I really can't thank you enough for being here.
Thank you, Kim. I'm excited that we finally had this conversation.
Thanks again for listening today. If you're struggling with imposter syndrome and you'd like additional support, check out the show notes for more resources or contact me directly. I would love to help you. And if you'd like to tell your story, I would love to interview you. You will find my contact info in the show notes, so reach out anytime. Thanks again.